Welcome to my channel. Today I will be reading from the r/true scary stories subreddit. So let's jump into the stories. The first story is, he lived in my attic for months. I am an amateur paranormal investigator, and I was working with a team at the time. We were investigating a house that was supposedly haunted. It had been propped open by a bit of wood and it had clearly been used by someone. There was no way that it had been shut properly, and yet it was closed on the footage. Someone had taken the trouble to close the door and sit on it to make sure it stayed shut. When I opened up the attic door, I saw a pair of feet on the floor above me. I couldn't sleep at all that night, and I was scared to go to the bathroom in case whatever it was came down the toilet or out of the shower. He came over and he went up into the attic and looked around. The only thing he found was a big hole in the wall where someone had apparently been living. Apparently, whoever it was had made the hole bigger so they could fit through it. He ended up patching up the hole and we never had any more problems. I got up to go to the bathroom, and as I came back, I stopped dead in my tracks. On my ceiling, right in front of me, was a huge dark figure, standing upside down on my roof. But here's the thing. The roof was completely flat, and there was no way he could have fallen up onto the ceiling like that. And also, my dad can't really climb onto the roof either because of his bad knee. I froze, and it kind of floated down and sat on the bed next to me. Then, it started speaking to me. I ended up sleeping in my sister's room instead. I remember staring at it and thinking, okay, now I'm going crazy. Once in the attic, we started to hear chains dragging metal moans. I don't know why, but I started to laugh, and my mom got scared and hid behind me. Eventually, he came out of a small hole in the roof and jumped down to the ground outside. He was barefoot, wearing dirty clothes, and had a scraggly beard. He ran off into the forest, and we never saw him again. Then we started to hear heavy footsteps near the hatch. We both froze and listened, but I was only 9 and I was scared for my life. Then we heard a crash and heavy footsteps followed by dragging. My mom and I nopeed out of there and headed to my brother's room. I grew up on a farm in a small town in Canada. This time, we took flashlights. Once in the attic again, we didn't see anything. But then we saw what looked like a set of dirty blankets, or a sleeping bag in the corner. We shined our lights on it, and when we did, we saw a guy sitting inside the blankets. He jumped out and yelled, "Gotcha," and ran around the attic. We had an old farmhouse that was falling apart. At the time, it was just my mom, my little brother and I. My father had left us a couple of years prior. The figure reached out a hand and touched my face. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you want to see another one of my videos, you can click the link on screen now. Have a good night, everyone. Then it vanished, and I heard a thump on the roof. Could have been a drifter who had climbed up from the backyard. Maybe a homeless person, maybe an animal. I don't know. I still get freaked out whenever I hear a floorboard creak. We ignored it, assuming that it was just raccoons. About a week later, the commotion started again, and it sounded like someone was actually walking around up there. My mom and I were home alone at the time, and my brother was at a friend's house. Mom and I looked at each other and said, "What the hell?" So we decided to check it out. We told our parents about the man in the attic, and they just laughed it off. They checked the attic and didn't see anything. And when they tried to get on the roof, they realized that it was impossible to do so without a ladder. They did find a small hole in the roof, but they just shrugged it off and assumed that it was squirrels. I screamed and ran downstairs and told my mom what I had seen. She said not to worry, that it was probably just a mouse, and to go back up there and get her stuff. I started to walk back up the ladder, when I heard heavy footsteps above me. We built a fort out of blankets and pillows in my living room and turned off all of the light, except for a lamp with a really bright overhead light. We were watching scary stories on TV and being stupid kids. We thought that we were going to get away with spending the night like this. I started screaming again and ran out of the house. Footsteps, clanking sounds, and some sort of muffled humming. Now, mind you, my dad had recently had surgery on his knee, and he was moving around in a lot of pain. Plus, he snores like a freight train. So my friend and I sat there discussing whether it was my dad, or if we should be afraid. You could hear scratching around before this happened. Now, it's possible that what we caught on tape was a raccoon, or some other animal, but the size of the footsteps leading up to the door and the creaking floorboards suggested otherwise. As the owner walked through the attic later that day, she noticed a mattress up in the corner which hadn't been there before. She went on to find various personal items as well, suggesting that someone had been living up there for quite a while. The homeowner had caught strange electrical disturbances in her home, and we were there to see if we could catch anything on our equipment. After setting up all of our cameras, microphones, and motion sensors, we headed out for the night. When I was about 8 years old, my family lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. My sister and I shared a room and our bedroom was downstairs. Our apartment had an attic with a pull-down ladder, but it had never really been used much as it was incredibly hot up there in the summer. My mom would keep up there, though, during the summer, because it was cooler than downstairs. It was until we got back home later that night that we discovered what we had caught on tape. The camera that was set up on a tripod in the attic was facing the door. Another piece of evidence that we caught was the electromagnetic field disturbance. In the end, we left most of our equipment running overnight to try and catch something when the homeowner was away. When we came back, we found the batteries had been drained from every single device. Either a very clever raccoon or someone was living in the attic. And since then, the homeowners have had regular unexplained occurrences in their attic, even after boarding up the entrance. The next story is, he lived in my attic for 6 months. One morning my mom called me into the kitchen and told me to go up to the attic and get her some stuff. This continued on for a few days. Every time I would go up into the attic, I would hear loud footsteps. One night, I heard chains dragging metal moans. The next day my mom called my dad and told him about it. To this day, I don't know what it was. The next story is Man in the Attic. I was about 7 years old and my friend and I decided that we were going to spend the night in my house. My parents' room was directly above us, and about halfway through the night, we started hearing noises above us. We ended up deciding that it was my dad. But halfway through the night, I woke up and the noise had stopped. It was a raspy voice, and it told me that it needed my help. It told me to come with it and to run away from my parents. When I tell people this story now, they always say, "Well, duh, your dad fell off the roof." So the next morning, my friend and I decided that we weren't going to spend the night again. Now, whenever I'm home alone, I keep all of the lights on, and I refuse to go into the attic. The next story is Man in the Attic. Well, one evening we heard some commotion in the attic. We grabbed a baseball bat and headed up the attic stairs. We locked the door and waited for a while. Eventually, we decided to check it out again. We chased him around the attic with our flashlight, trying to get him to come out. I feel bad for him because I don't think he had anywhere to go. And that is the end of today's video. Thank you for watching.